Martin is 85 years old and goes for a medical checkup. After the examination, his doctor says to him, "You're in remarkable shape for a man of your age." "I know it," said Martin, "but I've got a problem. My sex drive is too high. Have you got anything you can give me for it?" The doctor's mouth dropped open. "Your what?" he gasped. "My sex drive," repeated Martin, "is too high and I'd like you to lower it." "Lower it?" exclaimed the doctor, still unable to believe what his 85-year-old patient was saying. "Just what do you consider high?" "These days it seems like it's all in my head, doctor," replies Martin, "and I'd like to have you lower it a couple of feet if you can." A woman doesn't come home one night. The next morning, she tells her husband she stayed at a girlfriend's house. Suspicious, the husband calls her 10 best friends. Not a single one knows anything about it. A man doesn't come home one night. The next morning, he tells his wife he stayed at a friend's house. Suspicious, the wife calls his 10 best friends. 8 of them say, "Yep, he was here." 2 of them even say, "He's still sleeping on the couch." Teacher: "Jay, why are you down today?" Jay: "Because my mom is at the hospital and my dad is at the police station." Teacher: "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, dear. Do you want to go home?" Jay: "Yes, please." After Jay has left the classroom, the teacher asks the other classmates, "Why is Jay's father at the police station and the mother at the hospital?" Classmate: "Because his father is a policeman and his mom's a nurse." Johnny's dad told Johnny to take a shower. "I'm scared. Can I take a shower with you?" Johnny said. "No, son, that would be weird," his father replied. "Please see?" he cried. Okay, but just don't look down." Johnny, being the curious boy he was, looked down. "Dad, what's that?" he asked. His dad gave him a weird face and said, "That's my limousine." A couple days later, Johnny's mom wanted him to take a shower. "Please, can I take a shower with you?" "I'm scared." "Okay," his mom said, "but just don't look up or down." Obviously, Johnny was curious again, so he looked down. "Mommy, what's that?" he asked. "That's my garage," his mom said awkwardly. Johnny proceeded to look up. "What are those?" His mom looked disappointed. "Those are my headlights. That night, Johnny was having a nightmare, so he went into his parents' room. "Mommy, Daddy, I had a nightmare. Can I sleep with you?" His mom said, "Sure, but just don't pay any attention and keep your eyes closed." Johnny had another nightmare and woke up to a moaning sound, like a dying goat. He jumped and screamed, "Hurry, Mom! Turn on your headlights before Dad's limousine crashes into your garage!" On her first day in the retirement home, the new manager addressed all the seniors, highlighting her most important rule. The female sleeping quarters will be out of bounds for all males, and likewise, the male dormitory will be out of bounds to the females. Anybody caught breaking this rule will be fined $20 the first time. She continued. Anybody caught breaking this rule the second time will be fined $60, and if you're caught a third time, it will cost you a fine of $180. Are there any questions? At this point, an older lady named Kathy stood up in the crowd and inquired, "How much is it for a season ticket?" Bill worked at a pickle factory. After years on the job, he finally confessed to his wife that he had a terrible urge. He couldn't stop thinking about putting his penis in the pickle slicer. His wife gasped, "Bill, you need therapy!" But Bill shook his head. "Too embarrassing. I'll fight it off myself." Weeks later, Bill came home pale as a ghost. His wife rushed over. "Bill, what's wrong?" He whispered, "Remember that urge I told you about?" Her eyes widened. "Oh no, you didn't." Bill nodded. "I did." Terrified, she asked, "Bill, what happened?" He sighed. "I got fired." She pressed, "No, Bill. I mean, what happened with the pickle slicer?" Bill lowered his head. Oh, she got fired too. A woman in a supermarket hurries to the express line with a few items. The cashier has his back turned to her, so the woman says, "Excuse me, I'm in a hurry. Could you please check me out?" The cashier turns, looks her up and down, and says, "Nice tits." Old Earl had been bragging about the weekend ride all week. He spent Friday night polishing his motorcycle until it looked like a mirror. Early Saturday morning, he stepped into the garage wearing his leather jacket, boots, and that "don't talk to me before coffee" face. Then, drip. A light drizzle tapped on the driveway. His buddy rolled up on his bike. "Come on, Earl." "It's just a drizzle, good riding weather." Earl folded his arms. "I'm not risking my paint job for mild precipitation." The buddy sighed. "It's barely water." Earl pointed at the sky. "Barely water is still water." 20 minutes later, Earl was spotted pulling into the diner, driving his wife's 15-year-old dented sedan. And yes, it was now pouring rain. Husband, a doctor, and his wife are having a fight at the breakfast table. Husband gets up in a rage and says, "And you are no good in bed either," and storms out of the house. After some time, he realizes he was nasty and decides to make amends and rings her up. She comes to the phone after many rings, and the irritated husband says, "What took you so long to answer the phone?" She says, "I was in bed." "In bed this early? Doing what?" "Getting a second opinion." Nurse promises not to laugh at this man's problem. She failed. A nurse asked a patient to remove his clothing and put on a gown for the doctor's exam. "In front of you?" he asked shyly. The nurse replied, "Well, no, but I've seen the naked human body before." The patient shook his head. "Not one like mine." "You'd die laughing at my body." "Of course I won't laugh," said the nurse. "I'm a professional. In over 20 years, I've never laughed at a patient." "All right, then," said the patient. He dropped his trousers, revealing a huge body with the smallest adult male organ the nurse had ever seen. In both length and width, it looked almost identical to a AAA battery. Unable to control herself, the nurse tried to stifle a giggle, but it slipped out. Then she laughed even harder at the fact that she was laughing. Feeling terrible for laughing at her patient, she composed herself as best she could. "I am so sorry," she said. "I don't know what came over me. On my honor as a nurse and a lady, I promise it won't happen again. Now, what seems to be the problem?" "It's swollen," the patient replied. The nurse ran out of the room. A vacuum cleaner salesman knocked on my door. Before I could even say a word, he dumped a bucket of dog poop on my carpet and said, "If this vacuum doesn't remove every trace, I'll personally eat what's left." I replied, "Well, I hope you're hungry. They cut off my power this morning." A couple received a $350 hotel bill despite only staying one night. The receptionist explained, "It includes access to the pool, spa, and conference center." "We didn't use any of that," the husband protested. "Well, it was available to you," the receptionist replied. The husband scribbled a $50 check. "This is short," the receptionist said. "Exactly. I'm charging you $300 for sleeping with my wife." "What? I didn't." "Well, she was available to you." An elderly couple were sitting in a diner when the husband leaned over and said, "Do you remember the very first time we kissed and cuddled behind the village tavern more than 50 years ago?" His wife smiled. "Of course I do." "Well," he said, "how about we take a stroll back there and relive the memory, for old time's sake?" She laughed. "Oh, Jim, you're such a rascal, but why not?" A police officer sitting nearby overheard them and thought, "I've got to see this." So he quietly followed as the old couple shuffled down the street. When they reached the fence behind the tavern, the two leaned against it, hugged each other tightly, and suddenly began shaking and jumping around like teenagers again. The officer's eyes went wide. It looked like the most energetic moment he'd ever seen. After a while, they both collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. When they finally got up, the officer approached and asked, "Excuse me, but that was amazing. What's your secret?" The old man wiped his brow, steadied himself on his cane, and replied, 50 years ago, that wasn't an electric fence." An elderly couple was driving cross-country when a highway patrol officer pulled them over. The wife was behind the wheel, but she was a little hard of hearing. Officer: "Ma'am, do you realize you were speeding?" Wife to husband: "What did he say?" Husband: "He says you were speeding." Officer: "May I see your license?" Wife: "What did he say?" Husband: "He wants your license." She hands it over. The officer looks at it and says, "Ah, Arkansas. I went on a blind date there once with the ugliest woman I've ever met." Wife: "What did he say?" Husband: "He says he knows you." A grandmother was cleaning her attic, her cat faithfully following her around. While sorting through old boxes, she found a dusty old lamp. Curious, she gave it a polish. When suddenly, poof! A genie appeared. "I'll grant you 3 wishes," the genie declared. Grandma thought carefully and said, "I wish to be 20 years old again and beautiful. I wish to have more money than I could ever spend. And I wish my cat would become the most handsome prince in the world." The genie nodded, snapped his fingers, and disappeared. Grandma looked at herself, young, radiant, stunning. Around her were stacks of cash higher than the boxes in her attic. She twirled and laughed as the bills floated down like confetti. Then she turned to her beloved cat's spot. Standing there was now a tall, dark, incredibly handsome man with broad shoulders and a movie star smile. He walked over, cupped her face in his hands, and whispered softly, "Now, do you still wish you had taken me to the vet?" An old cowboy walked into the last Roundup saloon the other day, dressed in his finest cowboy outfit, had his 10-gallon hat, his best chaps, and his spurs on. As he sat there sipping a beer, a good-looking young lady came in and sat next to him. A few minutes later, she was looking at him up and down and asked him, "Are you a real cowboy?" The old cowboy replied, "Well, I've been on a ranch all my life roping cows, breaking horses, fixing fences, and chasing women, so yeah, I guess I am." "And what are you?" The young lady tells him, "Well, I've never been on a ranch, never roped a cow, broke horses, or mended fences, so I'm not a cowgirl, but I do think about women all the time. I wake up in the morning and think about women. When I eat, work, and shop, all I think about is women. I am a lesbian." A few minutes later, she gets up and leaves. After a while, another cowpoke walks in and sits next to him and asks, "Hey, partner, are you a real cowboy?" The old cowboy swallows the last of his beer and replies, "I thought I was, but I just found out I'm a lesbian." After working most of her life, Grandma finally retired. At her next checkup, the new doctor told her to bring a list of all the medicines that had been prescribed for her. As the young doctor was looking through these, his eyes grew wide as he realized she had a prescription for birth control pills. "Mrs. Smith, do you realize these are birth control pills?" "Yes, they help me sleep at night." "Mrs. Smith, I assure you there is absolutely nothing in these that could possibly help you sleep." She reached out and patted the young doctor's knee. "Yes, dear, I know that. But every morning I grind one up and mix it in the glass of orange juice that my 16-year-old granddaughter drinks, and believe me, it helps me sleep at night." A woman and her best friend are shopping for a wedding gown. Surprised at her choice, the friend exclaims, "You can't be serious. How can you wear white?" The woman asks why not. "Well," said the friend, "this is your 4th wedding and you're not a virgin." "Oh, but I am," replied the woman. "How can that be?" "My first husband was a gynecologist, and all he wanted to do was look at it. My second husband was a psychiatrist, and all he wanted to do was talk about it. My third husband was a contractor and never showed up. But don't worry, This time I'm marrying a lawyer and I know I'll get screwed. A lawyer married a woman who had previously been divorced 10 times. On their wedding night, she turned to her new husband and said, "Please be gentle, I'm still a virgin." "What?" said the baffled groom. "How is that possible after 10 marriages?" She sighed and explained. Husband number 1 was a salesman. He kept promising how amazing it would be, but never actually delivered. Husband number 2 was in software development. He wasn't sure how it was supposed to work, but said he'd troubleshoot and get back to me. Husband number 3 was from field services. He ran all the diagnostics but couldn't get the system up. Husband number 4 was in telemarketing. Even though he had the order, he had no clue when he could deliver. Husband number 5 was an engineer. He had a complex plan but needed 3 years to research, design, and implement it. Husband number 6 was in finance. He thought he could do it but wasn't sure it was in his job description. Husband number 7 was in marketing. He had great presentation skills but didn't know how to position himself. Husband number 8 was a psychologist. All he did was talk about it. Husband number 9 was a gynecologist. All he did was examine it. Husband number 10 was a stamp collector. All he ever did was, "God, I miss him." She then smiled at her new husband and said, "But now that I've married you, I know things will be different." "Oh, yeah? Why's that?" the lawyer asked. "Because you're a lawyer. This time, I know I'm going to get screwed."